discussing finding practical solutions, preventing or mitigating the risk of violence against property or business. By way of introduction, I just want to say that this roundtable is the last of a series of 3 on community safety in South Africa. The first roundtable focused on the threat against our communities and how we can find solutions through collaboration and building bridges among people in a community and broader society. A special word of welcome to our guests who registered for the event, and our panelists, Colonel Dr. 𝗦𝗳𝗁𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗏𝗂, Mr. 𝗧𝗯𝗹𝗺𝗂𝗃𝗃, Mr. 𝗩𝗂𝗶𝗿𝗁𝗂𝗁𝗋, and Professor 𝗦𝗂𝗺𝗃𝗋𝗋. I will introduce them in full when they take the opportunity to make their opening presentations. Thank you for making time to participate in this roundtable. We are here to learn from each other and from all of you. So please allow me 5 minutes just to give a short background to this roundtable. This roundtable takes place against a general consensus among safety practitioners and scholars focusing on peace and security in South Africa, that the threat of violence, both political and crime-related, is intensifying, while governance structures responsible for safeguarding our households and businesses are not coping. However, some good initiatives are in place, where governance and civil society is working together to meet the social contract they have with the citizens of their country. However, these initiatives are struggling due to inefficient leadership and the ability to manage the always scarce resources. The good news is that we have success stories we can learn from and build upon to create options in dealing with violence against all people in South Africa. And I want to briefly share with you something I put together just to give a framework to this conversation. I divided the information we have up to this point into 4 parts. And I put the households and business in our community, our households and businesses in the context of the communities where they are situated. Those are the households and businesses that we are protecting and safeguarding from day to day. But many influences are working into these households and businesses in our community. Right in top, what I identified as the poisonous snake, to make a long story short, is crime, from petty crime, organized crime, the whole spectrum of crime. We unpacked that in previous roundtables, and I think by now we are all aware of the threat. So you'll see I start with a very negative issues of threat against our businesses and households. On the right-hand side, I identified what I call the dead mule. It is crumbling governance structures and lack of service delivery all around us. The information on that is overwhelming, so I don't need to expand on that. And then in the circle in the bottom is what I call the stumbling mule. You have safety and security structures, but they are struggling to function. With all good intentions, but for many reasons, they are struggling to function, and they cannot meet the needs of society in terms of safety and security. And on the left-hand side, I identified the noble racehorse, which I will define as the effective collaborations to create a safe and security environment for all. So that we will go into more detail with today. So let me just unshare. So, without further ado, I just want to continue to say that we will focus to help our panelists today. I gave them certain questions to focus on. What capacity is required to control or manage community violence? We often hear the issue of capacity. Secondly, how can we build relationships with the community and within the community to prevent or mitigate the risk of violence against my business or household? And then the third question, what is the appropriate response to community violence within the legal framework of South Africa, of which we will hear some good examples today. I will paste this in the chat for your reference. Before handing over to our speaker, just a few technical arrangements. Please paste your questions in the chat. I will monitor it and refer your comments to our panelists for their responses after all of them presented. Please note that the proceedings will be recorded and distributed to all the participants when we finished with that. Thank you, colleagues, for coming here. Our first speaker today is Colonel Dr. 𝗦𝗳𝗂𝗹 𝗏𝗡𝗂. Welcome, 𝗦𝗳𝗂. Good to see you here again. Now, 𝗦𝗳𝗂𝗏 is here because of her vast experience as a senior intelligence staff officer in the SANDF, with many years of background in this field. She deserved a Doctor of Philosophy in the Political Science and Government from the University of the Free State and a Masters of Management in the field of security from the University of 𝗦𝗳𝗲𝗁, as well as a Master's in Military Science focusing on Africa and security studies. She is currently the chair of the School of Security and Africa Studies at the University of Stellenbosch. Dr. 𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝗦𝗳𝗂𝗏, welcome. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome, and of course, good afternoon to all the colleagues that are joining us online. Today, I'm not speaking to you from the Military Academy in Saldanha like last time. I'm now at the War College here in Pretoria. I will just kick off, since we have got very limited time to work through quite a body of work. The focus today is on finding practical solutions for crime prevention and mitigation, and therefore my presentation is aimed more obviously on the provincial and then specifically local levels of governance. So I think, as we all realize, building safer communities in South Africa is an extremely complex and challenging task because it involves so many moving parts. Factors such as the high unemployment. I know we're talking about 47% in general, but 65% specifically in terms of the youth is combined with several other levels of inequality. And this gives us, of course, as we all know, the highest Gini coefficient in the world. And last year in July, we actually saw the outcomes of something like that. This indicates extremely high levels of relative deprivation. And of course, this is exacerbated by things such as drug, alcohol abuse, breakdown of family structures, continued rapid urbanization, poor health, education, and so forth. So clearly, although we are talking about just crime and crime prevention, due to the wide variety of these drivers of instability, it is very evident that a much more broader and holistic approach must be adopted, those that extend beyond the criminal justice system. In addition, we spoke about this the first time around, that many of the local communities have lost trust in the police to actually actively do something about the security situation. And the success of any interventions that we actually want to go about will depend largely about the extent to which these solutions are locally owned, because I think they are tend to trust themselves more, and of course how much they are committed to the local solutions. So when we look at this, I think everyone in South Africa is clearly aware that there are a plethora of plans and strategies available. Every year or so, there are new plans. However, despite this plethora of plans and strategies, we don't really seem to be moving forward. So I don't think many people are interested in merely a new batch of policies and plans, especially if we are looking at original solutions. So we are now seeking community safety plans that will actually provide practical guidance on how to perform safety planning, as well as how to implement it in a manner that actually facilitates community participation, so that they are part of the solution, and that community security and safety isn't something that is merely applied to a society, but that they are actually part and parcel of it. So I think in understanding, developing an in-depth understanding of local situation, it is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution anymore. We will definitely have to have an in-depth understanding of that specific community before we start tailoring plans for them. Safety has a direct impact on sustainable development, and these initiatives, in order to have any success, must therefore be linked to that sustainable development. In other words, do much more than merely addressing crime. Interventions and activities to contribute to community safety are nothing new. As I said, several plans have developed since 1994 and prior to that. And they are also specifically addressed in the National Development Plan 2013, where they are focused on three activities using integrated approaches, community participation, and then thirdly, strengthening the criminal justice system and professionalizing and improving on police services. Due to the fact that, as I said, there's a lot of mistrust in communities about the whole policing effort, I thought today that I will focus more on the integrated approaches and then on how to get the community participation going. So these integrated approaches is something that's not specific just to community security, but even in defense environment, we have been working with what we call comprehensive, integrated, whole of government and whole of society approaches to safer security and defense since the early 2000s, I would say. As I said, this is a global development, and I think we can also clearly see the link to conceptualization such as human security, where there's a broader agency to safety and security. It is founded upon the notion that the responsibility is on everyone in society, and that it's not necessarily the role of defense or the police services to do that. It is evident from the factors above that more than effective and efficient policing is required to address all the underlying factors that contribute to these high levels of crime. Some, however, argue that the police remain the primary and responsible party for addressing crime-related issues, and that community safety in its broader context falls outside the responsibilities and ambit of local and provincial government responsibilities. They firmly want to plant that role of the SAPS in the center of community security. While it is true that law enforcement, correctional services, and the judicial system has an effective and active role to play towards the establishment and enhancement of community safety, these roles are primarily reactive and in response to crimes that have already occurred. On the other hand, actors outside the criminal justice system are viewed as having a sort of complementary role to community safety, meaning that they must work together to prevent violence by addressing the underlying risk factors to these vulnerabilities and fragile societies. Now, to this extent, local government plays a crucial role here, given their proximity to people living in those communities, and that they also understand the specific risk factors in that community. So if we look at safety, this is what I refer to as because I think it's also important that we buy into collective definitions of it. If we look at safety, it is deemed as more than simply the absence of crime and violence. It refers more broadly to the environment where people can live without experiencing fear of threats to their health and well-being. It's not just against criminality. It speaks to a broader social and environmental conditions, such as initiatives, we should embark on initiatives such as addressing high levels of inequality, limited access to employment and education employment, alcohol, drug abuse, how to find ways of enhancing social cohesion and so forth. As I said, security, on the other hand, refers more to the immediate protection against known or perceived threats to the physical body. And efforts to improve security often involve things such as tough on crime approaches, increasing the number of police officers deployed. So we can see there is clearly a dualistic approach to this with different role players in each of the environments. In terms of community safety, it is clear here that it is concerned with the collective experiences of people as a whole, rather than on the individual people living in a specific community. So I'm going to move on rapidly to say that in terms of the fact that there's a shared responsibility to ensure safety of every individual, types of violence prevention in a community include situational, social, and institutional initiatives. I do not have time to expand too much on each of them, but I can just mention that your situational violence prevention is aimed to reduce the opportunities for violence by altering the physical environment and other factors. Examples are improving on public infrastructure, basic service such as street lighting, public toilets, and so on, reclaiming public spaces through local interventions. Secondly, social violence prevention aims to strengthen, as I said, the social cohesion and reduce people's inclination or motivations to engage in violent behavior. Examples are building capacity within communities to participate in the decision-making processes, providing resilient services and job skills training programs, and so forth. And then thirdly, institutional violence prevention. This aims to reduce violence by changing the policy, legislation, and overall functioning of institutions, which includes both state and non-state entities that affect people at local, provincial, and then ultimately at national levels. So if we look at comprehensive whole of government and whole of society approaches to safety, it is very clear that safety is not the only critical element to violence prevention. It is also an integral part of building a healthy democratic society. Therefore, every phase of local, provincial, and national planning must consider the full scope of people's safety concerns and then develop strategies and intervention to strengthen the experiences of safety, specifically as it relates to the broader social environments in which they live. So although the responsibility for developing community safety plans falls within the mandate of local government, building a safer South Africa is a collective responsibility of that society. Now, I know a lot of this sounds a bit maybe too optimistic in the environment that we live in, but if you go and read the articles, there are many success stories in other cities across the globe where there were also relatively dire situations, but due to comprehensive and integrated solutions to this, a lot of the factors were in the end addressed. And this is dependent on the focus on community-centered solution and not so much on existing local and municipal solutions, but to actively involve the community in finding those solutions. This is not going to be easy to achieve given high levels of apathy and, as I said, a mistrust to new initiatives and yet another plan against the backdrop of sheer numbers. So especially in terms of the fatigue of non-service delivery. So if we look at roles and responsibilities for developing these integrated approaches, it is clear that coordinated actions across government departments is required, but it must also include from the start private sector and civil society, as well as active contributions and meaningful participation from community organizations and ordinary citizens. Last time, I think it was during the second summit, I said that whatever we come up with, we should already build on what has already been established. We must look at the particular emphasis is placed on the role of the local government, as I said, because of their proximity to the communities, whereas the provincial government, on the other hand, has a critical role to play in light of its mandate to support district and local municipalities, as well as your metropolitan municipalities, in the effective performance of their functions. The bulk of the responsibility of safety planning, however, lies with local and provincial government, although they ultimately feed into national initiatives. Local government level is the constitutional and legislative mandate is to promote safe and healthy environments. And planning must be conducted in a manner that is developmentally oriented in order to achieve the objectives of local government and to contribute to the progressive realization of people's fundamental human rights, okay? So the primary mechanism for fulfilling a lot of these roles is the development of integrated development plans, IDPs, at various levels. Well-placed, the municipalities in this sense are well-placed to elevate the concern of the communities, not only by integrating principles of safety throughout all aspects of development, but also by including an overarching plan to strengthen the community safety as part of every integrated development plan. Here we can specifically use, as I said, what is already available, make use of community safety forums, because as I said, they are well positioned not only to lead the development of community safety plans, but also, and this is essential in an integrated and multi-role environment.
Sorry, Letitia, are you wrapping up?
Yes, I'm wrapping up. To coordinate multi-sectoral approaches to building safer communities. Ultimately, the only way that you can really make this work is to share all the information that is available at that moment to ensure that everyone moves from the same firm base. There are more details about lists or actual activities, but I think I can address this during discussions later in the presentation. Thanks.
Wonderful. I think this is a perfect setting of the platform for our further discussions. And you bridging it right, exactly the right issue of information sharing within forums. And I think 𝗪𝗂 can take that further for us. Thank you very much for this. This is a wonderful framework for analysis that you put forward with us. Before 𝗪𝗂 continue, I just want to introduce him to you. 𝗪𝗂 is the program executive at Business Against Crime South Africa, which is a government company, leveraging the skills and resources with business and mobilizing anti-crime initiatives as a catalyst for change and a vehicle for adding tangible value and meaningful impact to the fight against crime. Currently, he's also the head of the national programs for business leadership in South Africa. 𝗪𝗂, thank you very much for making time to come to us, and please give us your solution that's already working. The floor is yours.
Thank you, 𝗪𝗂. I think you will quickly learn that I don't have as much words as Dr. Letitia, but it's so good to listen to her and to understand exactly, the broader problem and perhaps a broader solution. I think I just want to start on a more current practical point where we are today with the criminal justice system. I think that we all understand it's not working to its full potential. And I think it's well known that the criminal, when he decides to commit a crime, that his business plan includes the probability of being arrested, and not even arrested, but also go to jail. And I think we will agree that our criminal justice system has been damaged dramatically. The years, government's main task is to get criminals to jail and to stop crime wherever possible, and that includes community crime. I don't want to ponder too long on that specific one. We are assisting wherever we can, but just a little bit more on that. I mean, when a criminal again decides to commit a crime, he's got this old pain pleasure equation that he's using. So if there's not a big chance of being caught, he's going to commit a crime. And it's not only poverty and inequality and things like that is going to drive him to commit a crime. You know, on the other side, most of the people in the world, even if he can commit a crime without being arrested, he's not going to do that. So that comes back to his moral values or his values that they have in him. And that's something that must be addressed over a longer time. And 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃 did, I think, touch on that as well. But on the more practical side of things, and that's the way we sit. We normally sit on the sharp end of crime and how to prevent that. And I just want to sort of just emphasize again the roles of business against crime in South Africa, and has been established in 1996 already. When President Mandela requested big business to get involved in that. I think that's where we all started. Our focus is a little bit different. And although our focus is not on business only, but on the whole community of South Africa, how to keep them safe. And one of the distinct roles that business against crime had from day one is to partner with government when invited by sharing expertise, information, processes, technologies, and resident in business with government to assist them to do better policing. And that's where the 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃 initiative comes in. We have other initiatives as well, you know, with a national and with the NPA. I think that was very much in the news during the last few months, where we are assisting the NPA to give them people that can do data analysts, specialist data analysts, forensic analysts, investigators, and perhaps later even prosecutors. And also other things like the gender-based violence initiative that we have that is very close to what we're talking about now. But let me go to the 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃 initiative, because that's where I really think we are currently making a big impact now. The 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃 initiative was started in 2018 already, and I left business against crime. And when I came back, the first guy that I met was 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃𝗹 was also here on the platform. And we said, let's make a difference. And I asked him, well, what are we going to do? Because at that stage, we were tired of number plate recognition and trying to do things. And what's the next step? So 𝗦 had this idea of integrated communications between the police and the private security industry. And we went to the National Commissioner on his request, on the National Commissioner's request. And that's where the 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃𝗃 initiative was born, because he also, the National Commissioner, had this idea of, he called it the activation of the private security industry. That after many rounds of legal advice and changing of our project plan, the 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃𝗃 initiative was born, and the name was born there as well. And, you know, practically, if you look at it, the private security industry has got a lot more staff, equipment, vehicles, technology than the police themselves. There are more than 2.5 million security guards that are qualified, but 500,000 of them are employed by the private security industry. And I'm not talking here about helicopters and things like that comes into play here. So it just made common sense for everybody to use the geographical footprint, the technology, everything that's in the private security industry to provide the police with situational information. 𝗦𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 did mention the information as well as sharing of information, and that is the 𝗦𝗳𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 initiative. Now, initially it started off very small, and it grew massively. We have got now more than 250 private security companies that are actively part of it. When we started off with the pilot, you know, we did about, let's say, I don't know, about 500, 600 incidents that we shared with the police per month. We are about 2,500 today that we share with the police. Our database of suspicious vehicles are hit 14 million times a day, not per month, per day. Checking if a vehicle, for example, is a wanted vehicle by the police. And then that information is shared with the police as it happens. Now, this has really grown to the point where it almost got out of hand. And that is all privately owned information. I just want to make it clear. Privately owned cameras, helicopters, all of that feeds this information into the provincial operation command centers, which are the highest authority, operational authority in the province. And we've rolled it out in all the provinces except the Northwest province, but that will happen very soon. And then on the National Operation Command Center level as well, that is sometimes known as the NAC joints, where the Defence Force and everybody can sit together when you have something, for example, like looting. And we're constantly feeding that information through to them. And just to give an example, while it's on the platform as well, during the looting, but even today still, there are at least 8, 9 private security helicopters in the air, constantly feeding information through other situation on the ground through to the E2, the ICS people in the Provincial Operation Command Center that then share it with them. And that's actually where we started. So the whole best practice that we've developed over years that includes steering committees from a national commissioner straight through to national steering committees to provincial steering committees, district steering committees, and one of these days the police station steering committees as well, where the community actively gets involved in steering committees, but also having access to your local police to work with them, to discuss your problem areas, to address the problem areas, and then your 𝗦𝗂𝗺𝗂𝗁𝗂𝗧 environment, because these guys have started something like that already, where it's making a difference. Our first official district operation command center will go up in the 𝗦𝗂𝗺𝗏 district soon, where the private security people will work with the police officially on that. And now, because of the success of this, the police are grabbing onto it. The public are grabbing onto it. Business are grabbing onto it. And we are extending it. We are extending the mandate now. We're re-signing our memorandum of understanding with the National Commissioner soon. And then we will include, other outside the private security industry, especially to make provision for the rural safety environment. And I'm sure 𝗨 will talk a lot more about the rural safety things. But it has been so successful that on the Rural Safety Conference, the Minister of Police appointed a task team to look at rural safety. And the 𝗦𝗳𝗍𝗍 initiative were one of the solutions, one of the 6 or between 6 and 9 solutions that were identified as a possible solution to rural safety. So it again comes back to collaboration between business, private sector, as many people as possible with the South African Police Service, but in a formal way. I think there are too many informal attempts to collaborate with the police that will always fall apart. I mean, your station commander is going to get promoted or being fired, or he's going to retire, and then your unformulated initiative that you had will just fall apart. So it is a formal agreement of whatever we're doing. It is. I think I can stop there, but it is so effective that we need to see a change soon. Now it comes back again to the police's ability to respond to everything. I think that is also that's where we have still a bit of a challenge. But the cleverer we get, the more focused information we can give through to the police, the better policing will come. Thank you, Chris. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much, 𝗪𝗂𝗪. I nearly forgot to stop you because it was so fascinating to hear something working. And I wanted to leave my screen and run over to you and say, where can I fit into this? But fantastic. That is, thank you very much for giving us that initiative. And 𝗨 promised to look a bit more at safety, focus on the safety areas. So I'm going to introduce him to do that without further ado. Now, Wahl spent 18 years of his life as a military officer, including 6 years in a counterinsurgency unit in the former Southwest Africa, a member of Special Forces for 6 years, as well as military intelligence for the further 6 years. I don't know if that balance was by design, but it worked out fine. In 2001, he joined the private sector that culminated in a career in the security sector of 2 decades. For the past 12 years, he is also the Chief Operating Officer at 𝗦𝗳𝗏𝗂𝗧𝗂. Have all received various accolades within his security career, being instrumental in the fight against crime in South Africa. Later on, I will paste in the chat a successful crime fighting operation in which he played a leadership role. Paul, we are privileged to have you here. Man on the ground, experienced, sharing his knowledge with us. Cyberspace is yours.
Afternoon, thank you, and thanks to the panel as well. Yes, I'm going to talk a little bit more on grassroots level. That's where I'm operating, and I want to take us back to the slide that Dries showed us right in the beginning, which actually sums up it very, very well. Starting with the poisonous snake, which I'm not going to talk about, going to the dead mule, crumbling of government structures. Now, just to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, that we're sitting currently in the South African police with 6 Robbie 44 helicopters with 6 FLIRs, none of them working. Now, a FLIR is a forward-looking infrared system, and we know how handy that is, especially in nighttime. I'm not going to talk about the FLIR, you can go and Google, but I think everybody received those clips where you see it's either a white dot or a black dot running, and it picks up body heat, and without that, you're basically blind in nighttime. They currently sitting with 2 that's working on big helicopters that aren't even mounted. Cape Town, for instance, said close to 3 years without a helicopter. Now, I'm still at dead mule crumbling of government structures. You know, they average flying a month for all 9 provinces of those helicopters for the South African police force. It's not more than 330 hours a month. I've got about 5 contracts with clients. One of my contracts is 500 hours a month. Ladies and gentlemen, so dead mule is an excellent word for crumbling of government structures. Now, yes, we can sit and bitch and complain, but at the end of the day, there's still enough police that wants to work and that want to make a difference. Unfortunately, there's also a percentage corrupt, and there's also a percentage that's just incompetent. And we unfortunately need to deal with that. If you go to the stumbling mule, safety and security structures, the struggling to function, yes, that was our big problem. If you look at the E2, 𝗪𝗂 just spoke about it. We worked in compartments. If you take I'm going to go to the rural area now. If you take the residential area, specifically armed response, you'll see various armed response companies drive all over South Africa. There's no official talking to each other. There's no official talking to the police. Some of them are working in one area whereby they fall under one jurisdiction of the police station, and the other company just other side of the river, they fall in another jurisdiction of the. So there were no method whereby they officially could share information and talk to each other, and that's a recipe for chaos. And that's basically where the E2 comes in, where we say, let's structure it, let's start talking to each other, and let's go to the police, and we tell the police in exchange for that, we also want a representative in your highest command, not in your station, not in your cluster, not in your district, in your POCC, Provincial Operational Command Center. Because we've learned once you need to relay through various people, a pink Valiant starts coming out, a blue Mustang on the other side. So we've got a representative there where they've got the Air Wing representative, JMPD, EMPD, Tshwane, CI, and everybody in there, we've got a representative. Yes, it is agreed that only security companies can take part. and number plate recognition companies, and then also tracking companies. Those are the 3 companies. Reason being that those companies get vetted, and there's a director that signs the SOP, and you will work according to that SOP. So there's somebody taking accountability for his actions and these people's action. And that was the debate that we had with the lawyers for a long time within the police. And that's also the issue when we go to CPF, Neighborhood Watch, Agri, and all those people, is who's gonna be accountable for those individuals. And that is understandable, and that's the thing that 𝗪𝗂𝗺 and them, and he's sitting on that committee, is trying to sort out. So that's basically the ears and eyes in the residential area and the urban area. There's enough vehicles driving around from different companies, and now their control rooms are linked with each other, and they link with the security forces, law enforcement, different disciplines sitting in one room. Gauteng, for instance, is sitting there by Brixton. If we go back to the choppers, we've just got approval from the police to put a police radio in the private choppers, because, like 𝗪𝗂𝗺 mentioned, we fly more more than the police. I don't know if you these days see police choppers anymore, but the security chopper, you see them every 10 minutes in Gauteng. So we've got permission now to put police radios in the private helicopters so that we can talk directly to the POCC. Last year, December, for instance, each private chopper had a task force member in. So that's how we get closer and closer to each other to fight this crime in South Africa. There aren't another solution. There's no other solution. We can't do it on our own. We're not police members. We need the police officer that's got a badge. They can't, and it's been proven, they will never fight this war on their own. They need business, they need the society, they need private sector, they need the security forces. So we're happy to have that document signed, and 𝗪𝗂𝗺 played a huge role to get that signed off with the police. If you go to the rural area, the difference between urban and rural is you haven't got those various vehicles driving around, those different vehicles from security companies, those armed response vehicles. But the advantage, again, in the rural is that most of those rural community already mobilize themselves on some sort of a radio system or a Telegram or a WhatsApp group where they exchange information and they work closer with each other. But once again, they still got the problem whereby they work in isolation, as we worked in the residential area before we got electronic media, which is the Telegram and the radio. So this is what we're busy doing in the rural area now, is to get to them and say, guys, just think of this. Let's just take let's take Free State. Have you ever thought of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, security company in 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, talking to a security company in Ryds, talking to a security company that's in town at Frankfurt, talking to a security company in Warden, talking to a security company in Heilbron on one frequency? Where you want to drive to? Where you want to drive to? So what we tell these farmers is, use your existing communication. 100%, there's nothing wrong with it. But make sure within your network, you've at least got one player that's registered on the E2 so that he can relay that information to the highest command, which is the POCC. So once he gets that from the farmer and he's sitting in Heilbron or Warden, that security company, once he transmit that to the control room, all the other towns and all the other security companies will hear that. In the military, we used to talk about the red line. That's when the general phone the other general, and when you know you've got problems if you answer the red telephone. So I always tell them, just get on the red line. That's exactly the same is happening in the residential area now, whereby we ask the CPF, you've already streamlined yourself. Just link up with the security company that's on a red line, because we need your information at the highest command, which is the POCC. And vice versa, if there's a lookout for a specific vehicle incident member, then it will go to that to the security, and that security will relay that to the CPF. So by doing that, yes, the minister is right, the police are right. We haven't registered the CPF and the neighborhood watch on the E2, but via a security company that's registered, we still get that information to the E2, and also the E2 get their information back to grassroots level to those people. There's nobody else that can have a better view of what's happening when he's not working, he's sitting in his street, and he watches everything that happens in his street, and the next street, and the next street. We just need that information. We need that information via our network to get to the highest command within the province. And it worked. We've got the stats, it worked. It's just a bit of an adjustment if we go now to the rural area, where we need to adjust this project a little bit to fit those people's shoes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. This was a picture sketch to us, very clear of something that worked and where people made it work. Leaders, broad group of leaders decided to take hands and make it work. Thank you very much. I'm convinced these solutions can work. Professor Govender, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh, thank you very much. And we are so privileged to have you here.
Load shedding didn't eat us yet.
Yeah, mine is kicked in, but I've got all the backup to keep on working. Touch wood. Let me please introduce you. 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝘁𝘂𝗹 is a past governor of the South African Institute of Security, SAIS, Board of Governors. He's a former Assistant Commissioner and Major General in the South African Police Service. He's past President of the FBI Middle East Africa Chapter. He underwent many educational training and development programs, both internationally and nationally, including the FBI Program for International Students in Quantico, USA. He also served as the president of the FBI Middle East Africa Chapter. And in 2009, he joined the College of Law at UNISA and retired at the end of 2021 as a professor of criminology. Now, like any good professor, he continues with his research, publication, and teaching activities. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us and sharing us your broad knowledge, including a legal perspective or criminology perspective on solutions. Thank you, Prof. The chair is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for affording me this opportunity to speak to our audiences present via virtual systems. There was so much said so far that it seems like there's nothing left for me to say. So it's good to be at the end. Thank you very much for that. Nevertheless, I would like to not move away too much from the theme, finding practical solutions, preventing, mitigating risks of violence against property or business. But at the same time, I don't want to move away from the three questions that was posed, which I would deal with collectively. When we talk about, preventing and mitigating risks of violence against property, I would say assets or business assets as well. Property for me will also include residential and business premises. And of course, business premises, wherever they are operating, whether in a small way or a big way, So one looks at the theme, and if you look at the focus of community violence, many of us would have a different interpretation of what is actually required there. But everything that needs to be said has been said already regarding violence in general. I would like to just mention that, there's different interpretations that people would have to community violence. In terms of capacity of addressing violence in our country, which was, of course, the core of the 5-minute presentation by our previous speakers, I would like to get directly to the point that with regards to capacity, I would like to break the issue of policing into reactive and proactive. One looks at the reactive approach and the successes. It speaks for itself in terms of the number of arrests that the police are making, for drugs and other types of serious crimes. But there appears to be a shortcoming in regards to the proactive approach, and I think that's where the concern is, and that's where we talk about crime prevention. For me, the private security plays a very vital role in terms of a proactive approach. If you look deeper into what they do and how they are projected by residents of South Africa, about 90% of the people in South Africa believe that the private security can protect them and prevent crime by assisting them. When they're called out, the response, they are there. So as far as the reactive side is concerned, there's a lot of work being done, good work, of course, by the police as well. Arrests are being made, as I mentioned earlier. But one must not lose sight of the fact that with regards to capacity, we are very fortunate compared to the international countries. Why I'm saying this, you might be wondering, what do I mean by capacity? We are very fortunate. We have a police service which is mandated by the Constitution and the Police Service Act as a primary stakeholder in policing. There are so many other initiatives that come from, other sectors in government and the community. We actually have a pluralistic approach in South Africa, where we've got the South African Police Service who are giving us their numbers that they have in terms of the number of personnel they have and what is actually needed further. And if one looks at other government departments and the community's inputs, you can see that the other government departments also have statutory powers in terms of some instances, crime prevention and investigations. For me, all of these people can be classified as part of the bigger picture of policing. They have those powers in terms of the statutory legislation in respect of their own departments. For example, if you look at SARS, they're responsible for customs and other forms of intelligence policing. If you look at Home Affairs, they've got border policing, they've got other forms of policing. They're also involved in the entry and exit of our people that come into the country, move out, and of course, undocumented persons. They have to have powers to work on that. And if you look at other government departments, there's many other government departments that have statutory powers to work within communities. And then, of course, we have our community policing structures. We have community patrollers. We have the corrections department who have their own arm for some sort of activity in policing. SANDF has its own way of investigating their own incidents. That's all part of policing. And of course, the private security industry does their own in-house incident investigations. A whole lot of people involved in policing. But what is missing is what was mentioned by one previous speaker, the coordination of all these specific entities and their responsibilities as investigators and crime prevention officers. Who is coordinating this in an area? If you go to any police patrol area, you'll find the police are responsible for their own functions. The community are there to assist as a CPF. They have the community patrollers. They have the monthly meetings. And business, in some instances, is represented. The Metro Police is represented in some instances. But at the end of the day, there's no proper coordination of all these other people's work that is going into policing. So it's actually a wasted effort of having no coordination. Management and control is missing. Yet the primary stakeholders should be coordinating all these activities. There are also people doing their own security to protect their own interests, like we have bicycle patrollers, we have business watch, car guards, we have the Metro Police doing traffic policing. If you look, for example, at the United States, you have one county. The person, the head of the police, they will take charge of all these activities and coordinate them and make sure they address the specific strategic issue affecting the specific community. So for me, in terms of capacity, I think we don't have an issue, really. We just need to get proper management and control and coordination around capacity. How can we build relationships? It's very simple. At the moment, we have business. They have created a lot of support structure for the police, as it was mentioned by the previous speaker. Businesses Against Crime has been doing a lot. Surveillance cameras, taking care of car guards, and putting a lot of other projects in place over the years. So we need to also go back and look at what the police had in place when actually 1994, when the police structures came in place. What did the police actually have in place? The police officers that were involved in policing had to implement the National Crime Combating Strategy. Then they have the National Rural Safety Plan. Then they have the White Paper of 1998, which was actually not implemented. That White Paper actually asked for interventions from various government departments, but because it was not implemented, it was watered down, those initiatives never came to fruition. So actually, that had to be revived again recently, where the White Paper was revived, but in a different format. And one must not forget that the White Paper is also linked to the National Crime Prevention Strategy, where we had pillars. Various government departments played a role with regards to socio-economic issues. Now, that's very important. Once you get stabilization in a specific area, you need to ensure that socio-economic issues are addressed immediately. If we look at the 1998 the White Paper, it spells out clearly there the interventions that are required to improve specific areas of crime problems. Then we have the National Crime Combating Strategy. That was working very well. Then we have community policing, which was institutionalized, sector policing, crime intelligence, led policing, and then back to basics. Now, the weakest link here is that every time they introduced something, it was not taken to its ultimate end. It came up with a new leader, with a new vision. it went on to the next one. Then it went to the next one, the next one, next one. So each strategy was not given an opportunity to roll itself out. If you look at the National Crime Combating Strategy, it mirrored with the CompStat process of the New York City in America. And it showed us that crime can be reduced. And this happened during the era of the National Commissioner 𝗧𝗯𝗹. I mean, where he kept his thumb on the pulse to ensure that every police commissioner or police station commander accounts for the crime figures and give feedback. And that's very vital. That is no more being done, according to my knowledge. Maybe it is being done internally. But this was something that actually drove people to achieve the targets. If there was a specific crime in a specific area, they will have to account as to why the numbers have increased. So this type of accountability is missing. See, maybe at that time they should have had an executive council with the community to say, we also need to be accountable to the community. So the community could have kept track of how this progressed in terms of that strategy and whether we should take it off or not. Now, these strategies are put in place and removed without the consent and discussion with the community. The community must give consent to the type of policing they need. What are the expectations of the police? To what extent are the community involved in the strategic planning of crime prevention in their areas? Do they identify their needs to the station? Or do they just follow a up-down approach or a hybrid approach? I'm really not sure about that. But what I can say is that the community needs to have a participative role in terms of putting together a plan to say this is what our needs are. And if you look at each police station area, it was mentioned by Dr. Letitia, that all our police station areas have different needs. You might have murder cases in one particular police station precinct, but the other precinct will have more house robberies. Other one might have burglaries and not really robberies. One might have a problem with the disturbances, prostitution, etc. So crimes differ from one area to another. So there has to be a specific plan for a specific area. Now that initiative is not being taken forward. Although I worked very closely with the specific police station area, and I picked up, practical problems. Senior people do not get involved. They send a person who's got no decision-making powers, authority, to participate in a community police forum meeting, but strategic decisions have to be made regarding these plans. I actually assisted to bring out a needs analysis in the specific station precinct to say, this is the needs, what the community have mentioned to me in my research. We need to include this in the plan. No cooperation came from the senior officers. So for me, this is where the problem is. What are we actually addressing? Are we addressing the core problem in the specific area, or are we just addressing issues at random? Because that's a focus nationally or provincially. Yet again, I want to go back to another thought. This is where we are still impacted by colonial policing. Colonial policing in the sense that we have a structure which tells us what to do. Strategy doesn't talk to the structure. The structure talks to the strategy. We have introduced sector policing. Very good concept, excellent concept. What is the shortcoming? Shortcoming is resources are not there. Who is managing those sectors? The CPF, the community patrollers, the private security companies are involved. They're managing the sectors. Police station gets involved, they come, they look at the situation, patrols, so forth. There has to be accountability. There has to be accountability. Now, if you look at patrols, people are just patrolling at random. If you look at research, in 1975, in Kansas City, USA, they did research on generalized patrols. And they found that it was not a feasible way of addressing crime. In 2016, it was released again that Minneapolis police did another research and found that hotspot policing was more effective. And the police presence there should be more visible for a longer period of time. So these are some of the aspects that we're sitting with, where we introduce a strategy, but the strategy has got no resources. So we look at the structure of the strategy after we introduce a strategy. That's important. Not when we have the structure on the top and the strategy at the bottom. So that's my view on that. But as far as appropriate the sponsors are concerned, we can assist in many ways. Business, let's look at the risk management process, ISO 31000 of 2009. It's very important for business and residents as well. They need to have a properly designed public physical protection system. They need to use people who got knowledge of risk management. And they need to follow the characterization of their businesses and their homes to see how far away from problem areas they're situated, what steps they need to take. They need to define the threats and see how they become targets for what type of crimes. And they're going to combine the outer and inner layers of their protection systems to see how they can support and protect themselves against criminal elements. So, in a nutshell, business and residential owners must look at continuous threat assessment, vulnerability assessment, and criticality assessments to measure probability and impact. This is very vital. We need to take initiative on our own, as well as make sure that the police supports us in whatever initiative we have, because they have got the reactive resources to assist the public, and they have a legal obligation constitutionally and in terms of national legislation to help us in combating crime. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't exceed by...
Yeah, thank you very much for this. Your presentation was so fascinating and so first-hand that I really didn't want to stop you. So okay. I gave you some leeway here, but thank you very much for sharing this knowledge from your lived experiences. It gives us very good perspective on the many things we are talking about from day to day. I'm glad you could make it. We are now. I'm looking at different questions. Very few interesting questions to our panelists. The first one comes from our host, 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝘁𝘂𝗹, and his question is specific to 𝗨. 𝗨, what is the mandate of a private security company or a community safety group to respond to a criminal incident taking place in the absence of SAPS, without opening themselves to criminal prosecution? Well, this is so much in your field, and I think Professor Govender can also add to that. What is the mandate of private security companies?
Yeah, thanks, 𝗪𝗂𝗧. Yeah, what we do specifically on the mines, for instance, when you get paid to protect assets, lives and assets, you've got the full right to deploy and to arrest whoever interfere there. And then as a citizen, you must remember, you've always got the right to do a citizen's arrest, not just security. Anybody can do a citizen's arrest. But that's how we deal with it. Comes in when you follow people and it's a suspicious vehicle. And this is where we also try and educate security companies at the E2, and maybe 𝗪𝗂𝗺 can come in as well, is that you haven't got the mandate to act and pull the vehicle over. I mean, we had security companies and we've taken action against them where they have roadblocks. It's totally illegal. Just to follow a suspicious vehicle and pull him off the road, it's totally illegal. So you need to be very careful how you handle those cases. 𝗪𝗂𝗺, if you want to add.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I can come in. Yeah, no, Paul is 100% correct. The E2, the eyes and ears, doesn't give a security company more powers. They still work on the laws of the country. I mean, we would like to have more powers, but we're not really going to get that. I think a good example is with Transnet, where their security companies of staff has now been given certain rights as well. But we must be very, very careful when it comes to that. I think from the rural side, there's quite an outcry from the rural areas where they want to extend the reservist system. Because now, I mean, if you're 55, you must retire as a reservist, and you're limited quite a lot of what you're able to do. But I think, like the previous speaker said, is the shortcoming in the police, is quite a problem. So what do you do in a rural area if there is a crime committed and you can only do a citizen's arrest? Or you wait for the police and they can't respond because they don't have vehicles, not that they don't want to respond. And that is one of the things that we need to address is the shortage of policemen that can respond to crimes. Might be, shortage of vehicles not serviced, broken vehicles, or shortage of staff. But that's a long-term solution that we will have to look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I suppose a citizen's arrest can be a dangerous venture in some circumstances. Prof. Governor, do you want to add to that?
Yes, no, thank you very much, Program Director. I agree with both the speakers. And a very vital point that has been touched here is the mandate of the private security industry. I've done research on that as well, and they've been really suffocating, without the powers, but yet they do such an amount of work in all spheres of society, big institutions, even protecting certain government buildings. So for me, we've been fighting all along in terms of research. We need to have more powers given to the private security. Where is beside arrest, where is the search and seizure powers? I mean, of course, specific areas have those powers in terms of statutory legislation, like mining that was mentioned. Mainly the security officers operate by consent. It's like in a roadblock. The consent is given by the motorist to search the vehicle, tacit consent. So the same thing operates in a shoplifting case. Private security official wants to search somebody, he immediately says the policy of the company is to make sure suspected that you've got something in your possession. So that's the only thing that they really rely on, with the policy of the company. But beyond that, we need legislation. Talking about reservists, I'm not sure up till now as to why reservists were taken out of the force multipliers in the service, because they're very vital piece. And they're the people, can support the police, and they will have the powers of a peace officer if they are sworn in as a reservist. So these are some of the things that one needs to look at to assist in terms of force multipliers. Reservists is a very vital issue. If business against crime can take this further, it'll be good for us as citizens of the country.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Right. I think we mentioned a very good possible solution there that everybody is working on. So thank you for that. Ian is asking, hello Ian, good to see you here. Ian is of the opinion that the eyes and ears is the way to go. But it's one initiative, and technology by itself will not win the war. Neither will virtual crime fighting PPPs, as has been proven all over and over. Meeting once a month like the national or provincial jobs. We need a new physical infrastructure approach, call it local crime combating centers, for a lack of better term. Population and led on an equal basis between the private and public law enforcement people. Not a policeman versus horseman trade-off, etc. You do what we say because law enforcement is our constitutionally obligated responsibility. You've had your opportunity. These will all have E and E links, limited intelligence capabilities, monitoring and response capabilities, linked to police and private security. More importantly, we'll do analysis on local crime on local crime risk factors to understand hotspots and to address also the community and people-related issues. These must be integrated, as Letitia says. Great, thank you very much for that very valuable comment, Ian. We should get you to give a presentation on this some point in the future. Thank you very much for this, and I see a hand. 𝗪𝗂𝗪, you want to comment, please?
Yeah, I think Ian is spot on with his comments, and I even copied his comments and put it in a Word document to have a look at it, because I know Ian, I know he's very well informed, and I agree with him. And I think that's part of the eyes and ears that we are trying to achieve as good as we can, and that is going down to he calls it the crime combating centre. Now we're working on the district operation command centres to fit into the police's structures. Now that is a command centre where the private security and whoever is going to be approved in the future after vetting will sit together and then do responses to that environment, crime in that environment. So it is taking it a bit down to a lower level, and it might even be the police station. A good example is in Centurion, where the police stations, a few of them came together and they're working with the private security to put up a centre like this. So it is definitely practical. And one of the things that he also mentioned is that policeman versus horseman thing, and I'm very set on that. Whenever police tells me in the Eyes and Ears initiative that they're doing us a favour, I lose it, because they're not doing us a favour. We're doing them a favour. We equal partners in so that's definitely not on. So that is definitely so. There's a lot of things that he says it is good. I think the Eyes and Ears link is definitely so. From each and every possible level of then control room that we have is to link it is linked with the Eyes and Ears initiative, because it's information flow, it's intelligence, is how you do it. You need to get the information through to the police, which are supposed to do their work. And we're trying to give them information, as good as possible, as reliant as possible for them to respond to that. So that's in short. I think there's a lot of truth in what he said there, and we are working on it, Ian. That's the idea of the DOCCs and even going the new districts of the police. My opinion is too big. If you look at the old Tshwane district, I mean, from Centurion to the other side of Pretoria, it's just too big. You have to break it down to even smaller parts. The challenge is, of course, your capacity. I mean, private security industry, like the 𝗦𝗳𝗄𝗎 coins and the Fidelities are already spending a lot of money on the Eyes and Ears initiative, won't be able to put people, private security people, sponsored people, in all the district operation command centers. That is where you have to have your local guys coming in and take that up. I don't think we're too far from the first DOCC being implemented on a local level, but it might still take a while for us to get the contracting right. We are on I won't say thin ice, but on sort of a new type of thing that we need to work on and to get all the powers and things in place. Thank you for that remark. Thank you, Dries. Back to you.
Yeah, wonderful response. Thank you so much for that. General 𝗪𝗂𝗻𝗋𝗄𝗎, General, good to see you again here supporting us and sharing your knowledge. She says, I agree with the points raised by Dr. Letitia. I think we need champions willing to engage directly with community leaders in a proactive and sustainable manner. Furthermore, we need to establish and implement effective conflict management systems and processes. This cutting off your nose to spite your face must come to an end. As the other panelists have been stated, as the other panelists have been stated, we must adopt coordinated approaches, note lessons learned, and generate new knowledge and practices. Wonderful. That is a nice summative statement of what is needed. Thank you for that. Any comments on that? I'm also copying this in my work document, but I wrote there in the reference 𝗪𝗂𝗻𝗋𝗄𝗎 there. Thank you very much for that, together with Ian's. I don't see any comment there from the panel.
Sorry, there are hands up from Letitia and Val.
Oh, I don't see it at my side. Letitia, please. I think you're muted. I cannot hear you. Where are you going?
Can you now hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfect. Thank you.
My comment expands to what Val spoke about the sharing of information. I think just shortly in that, with these integrated and comprehensive approaches, I think essentially is we will understand that we must have a common operating picture that can be used with everyone involved, because I think there's a great danger that if it's fragmented, you won't really get the bang for your buck that is actually available. Now, it is very difficult to have these common operating pictures and shared situational awareness programs if we are working with ad hoc structures. And why I'm saying this is these things take relationships with those involved takes many, many years to develop in the first place. And often you will find that on a personal basis, when I was still working on the tactical level, you will build up a very good relationship with, for instance, one station commander, but have a less successful relationship with the one following on him. And that is why it is so important to have formal structures in place that remain there and can be developed over time. Now, a lot of time people say to me, but when I profess about these integrated and whole of society and whole of government approaches, that are maybe too ambitious. But we mustn't forget that we had something similar like this in 2010 with the World Cup. There were the jigs and jocks and the peacocks and the nicocks at all levels were running. And I think it's actually sad that we had it working like that. At that stage, I was doing some research at the CSIR, and we made good inroads in how to share information, in what profile, what the protocols for data sharing was, and so forth. We made good inroads in that. And I think the way that we can sell that to make people feel less uncomfortable in saying, okay, but it's now again a police state with Big Brother is watching, is to come back to my initial point to say that when it comes to community safety, to take it further, although crime and crime prevention is of a high priority, but that we take the utility of something like this even further and saying, if we've got effective blanket coverage, in specific areas. And they must be tailored for rural as well as urban areas. But that you can use that same data for risk management. If there are floods, if there are things like that happening, you can easily utilize that same set, the same data set, and all the parties and agencies involved will work from that same common operating picture. That is in short just on that intelligence picture that we must develop.
Thank you so much. Intelligence picture coming together, one system. The solutions are there. We just need people to make it work. Val?
I just want to talk a bit on the number plate recognition. You know, number plate recognition started a long time ago between Business Against Crime, and 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 was there before he left, and he came back with the South African police, and then it died down. It was a system called Syntel. And then it sort of died down, and now we've got the E2, and now it's getting alive. But there's about, 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, you can help me, I think 11 or 12 systems in this country currently. Good system, but we've got a tendency of looking at a money-making system and not necessarily fighting crime. It's an excellent tool to fight crime. And I think Prof. Governor mentioned it also. We just need to fine-tune it again. It's already there. They've got it there, but we've got 10, 11, 12 databases. So for the police now to go and look at vehicle X that did the crime last night, they must phone 12 civilian companies to go and see what they've got on their database regarding that specific vehicle. So there's a thing that 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 is running now and busy compiling that by Business Against Crime, whereby it says, do your thing, do your business, make your money, but give us as Business Against Crime access so we can get a better picture to the police, because it's an excellent tool whereby we can have that access, put it in a computer, and it runs at the back to 12 different companies where we can flag vehicles. And remember, if there's a crime, they normally drive that vehicle with false numbers or duplicate numbers a certain area. Now imagine if you quickly get that number, because we get it in seconds. The security is normally within seconds, maybe minutes on a scene, and then they give us that detail and that number. Now we need to struggle to phone 12 companies. So once again, excellent idea, nice tools, technology, just not fine-tuned.
Lovely. Databases not speaking to each other. Big problem. Many years with us. Thank you all. Matthew Jonker. He's got a question for us. Thank you, Matthew. What role could the private sector take in improving education, employment, and the other social drivers of crime? If the primary purpose of private security is to reduce crime, there could be opportunity for long-term benefits in public partnerships in social programs. Question, what can the private initiatives can the private sector take in improving education, employment, and other social drivers of crime? Who wants to take that one? Letitia? 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪's got his hand up. Thank you, 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪.
Yeah, look, that's always a controversial, not really controversial issue, but what are we doing? I mean, big business are very big in assisting to, especially to create jobs, you know, and social crime, combating things. You know, I always say that if you ask business for money, for some of the initiatives like we have with the ISMEs and APR, you don't get it that easily. But when you, as soon as you start asking for gender-based violence to support that, there's quite a lot of support from business itself. So big business are playing a big role already to get, you know, to assist it by education, you know, in our own environment with business leadership. You know, we are helping with education, we're helping with appointment of people, and all the big businesses have got their CSI expenditure. And that was almost the end of Business Against Crime, because at one stage, all businesses CSI spendings went into education and not into the fighting of crime anymore. So it was almost a negative effect that it had on crime, because then crime started to rise. and you're starting to lose again on the other side as well. So a lot is done, without a doubt, especially from big business. I don't know if 𝗲𝗁 wants to respond specifically to the private security industry, but they are a massive, job creation environment, or providing jobs to people. So a lot is done. Yeah, when it comes to gender-based violence, and from our own environment, we put up this gender-based violence centers at police stations, and they do play a major role. But it's almost too late, because you must start with the education of your young people. Again, working on their moral values. And if I would say moral values, it's not necessarily, from a church side or whatever, but their moral compass. And there are a lot of them are so exposed to crime from a very, very young age. I mean, if you look at the research that was done at the age of 12, your serious criminals, were exposed to one other type of violent crimes, even rape, murders, and they just go on, with this cycle. So that might be something that somebody else can address. I think from our side, we focus on the sharpening side of things. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, 𝗪𝗂𝗺. Just to inform you that I received a warning from my computer that I'm out of power. So it will cut me out any time now, and I still have load shedding. I thought the battery would last until 4 o'clock, but so just a warning. Willie agreed, 𝗦𝗂𝗺𝗁𝗂, he will take over the chat if it happens. And it's going to happen soon. So let me thank you all for coming here today, and thank you 𝗦𝗳𝗄 Holdings, who is an example of big business, or business supporting educational initiatives like that. So thank you very much for that purpose, for supporting this. Rory Hashik says, what is the panel's view on the proposed draft trespassing bill? And what is the chance of the law being passed, please? The draft trespassing bill, and what is the chance of the law being passed? Panel. Prof. Governor, are you still with us? Yes, he's there.
Yes, I'm with you.
Do you want to take that one?
Well, really speaking, it is still the process of consultation. So we are not certain whether it will be passed or not, but I can see that many people are not too happy with the contents. I mean, I personally am not happy with the content as well. I mean, I cannot put a note signboard out there saying that, no trespass is allowed in my residence. It's my residence, so nobody has a right to enter there without my permission. So this one aspect only I'm pulling out of that. So there's various other issues that people are talking about around the new Trespass Act, the Trespass Bill. So I don't know. I don't think it'll go through without aggressive mustering. Definitely not. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other response from our panel? Pierre Lindbergh asked, hello Pierre, good to see you again. A very interesting question. How can we leverage the motorcycling fraternity to assist and collaborate? We talked about this before, Pierre, but let's hear what our other panelists says. The motorcycling fraternity to assist and collaborate. From motorbike fans, wow, 𝗪𝗂𝗺.
Yeah, if I can come in here, Pierre, like I said, and it's understandable from the police side because somebody needs to take ownership of that company that belongs to the E2. But like I said previously, and it goes for the ambulance, it goes for the breakdowns, and goes for all those people, those tow trucks that all want to join, and it all tells us they've got eyes and ears, and we say we understand that, it's 100%. But make sure that you link up with a security company on the red line. Mobilize, get yourself a radio network, get yourself a WhatsApp group, but get yourself a security company. The radio that we're currently using is a PTT radio that talks on a cell phone network. So you talk from here to Uppington, to Kuruman, to Spain. It's got a SIM card in. So mobilize yourself and get yourself one of your radios within a security company, because then basically he's got your ears and eyes and he will relay that. And once there's stuff coming back that needs to act upon, then he will transmit that to your ears and eyes. But it goes for the ambulance, it goes for the tow trucks, and we've got many other societies that wanted to join, and they're already joining. They're already joining and mobilize themselves on their radio network. You just need one radio at a security company, and then you on it. Pierre, if that answers your question.
So where do Pierre go tomorrow morning and start the process for his motorcycling club?
Well, he'll phone me and then I will assist him and I will help him. And you must understand, these radios, it's not the normal radio. The other day, the General 𝗦𝗳𝗲𝗁, which is the PC of Gauteng, said, "Well, I can't understand why the private sector has got these radios and we're still struggling with the Tetra radio, and every second criminal has got a radio and our frequency has been compromised." This radio, everything gets recorded. This radio plots every radio every minute. So you just have to drive. You don't have to tell him you're on the R34, you're behind this truck, he's like a maniac. And please say, they can see where you're driving. They see on the software. So every control room has got the software whereby they see every radio, which radio is on, which radio is off. They see the position of that radio. It records. That controller can go and he can take Pierre if he's behind the truck, and he can link Pierre with Val on a, he just takes it out, those two, and he can take 𝗪𝗂𝗪 and Letitia and say, "There, you're for, talk quickly," and then we can talk our things, and he press a button and we all go back to our respective channels. So it's a really complicated radio that assists us a lot in fighting crime. We had a discussion, in fact, not a discussion, was actually her idea, advocate, what is her name at the NPA? She said we mustn't forget we can use the radio's GPS in court cases, because what's happening now, the backup vehicles escorting these trucks has got radios. So when they rob, they take this radio, and normally they leave it on because they want to hear what's happening in the vicinity, and that radio gets tracked. So it tracked up to a point, and if you arrest that guy, you can actually use that in court. Advocate Johnson, Andrea Johnson, said we mustn't forget that we can use that. So that's also another thing. So the radio is very, very powerful.
Thank you very much. Pierre, are you happy? Give us a thumbs up. Okay, we'll call Pierre in any case. Thank you very much for that. Anymore, I think the questions are exhausted. I hope I didn't miss anything there. Just people thanking the panel, and yes, it's a pleasure. It's really a privilege to have you with us all together here today. So, closing statement, 1 minute each. If you don't mind, you may make it 2. I've never been strict on you. So let's start with Professor Governor. Are you ready for a 1 minute, just a 1 minute conclusion, if you wish?
Yes, no, thank you very much, Program Director. Well, I feel there should be a continuous collaboration between community structures and government departments responsible for different types of policing, and interdepartment cooperation among departments responsible for local government, education, and social services. If we look at the murder rate so high in the country, it doesn't seem to be going down. And every time we hear that most of the murders are taking place indoors, but what interventions are taking place in terms of getting social workers to address these victims, the perpetrators, and the witnesses, who in most instances are children? They become future criminals after witnessing such violent crimes in their homes. So these are some of the interventions I would like to see for the future to bring down the murder cases. If we are saying the murder cases are taking place indoors, then this is a way to go. Be more proactive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for that. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to say we've got enough negative things in this country. There's more than enough expertise in our own country. Technology, people, black, white, old, young, ex-PCs, ex-CEOs. We just need to get together and keep on making these plans. There's no other way for us. We're not going to run away. It's our country. We're going to stay here. We're going to fight here. And we'll win this war.
Thank you very much. Very good wisdom spoken. Very, very concisely. Thank you so much. 𝗪𝗂𝗧?
Yeah, I think everything was about said. I think the day when I give up in the fight against crime, you must just get rid of me, export me to another country. So I will never give up. I think there's a lot of business opportunities, business, willing to assist the police, the MPA, any department, any government department. We just want it to be taken up seriously. I think that is the important thing. We are spending millions of rands on crime fighting. In the 𝗧𝗯𝗹𝗲 initiative, I mean, it's not cheap to get for Val to keep his helicopters in the air. But we are willing to do that, but then we must be taken up seriously, and we are. I mean, I must say that the relationship that we have with the South African Police Service has never been better. I think they also realize that they are limited by I don't want to say capacity, because I have the members. It is more procurement processes. For them to fix their helicopters, fix their vehicles, to get it in the air, training the people, and we are definitely willing to do that, and we will always be willing to do that. I think it is so important for business to keep on assisting, and for government to be willing to take this help. A good example is Advocate 𝗦𝗳𝗏 that contacted us and asked for our assistance, and we're willing to assist. I think that's going to be make a massive difference in the future on that. But the government must be willing to work with business. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I pasted Val's success story there for you, the YouTube file, if you want to copy it quickly and have a look at it. Letitia, final word is yours.
Yes, thank you. Not to repeat what we're saying, I think everyone on the panel today reiterated the fact that I think most South Africans want to contribute to establishing a better future. And most people are prepared to walk more than the proverbial extra mile. However, I think the one thing that we must make sure of is that when we move forward, that we do it in a coordinated and planned way, obviously within the confines of the law. And that to get proper tailor-made local responses, I think can start off by doing proper community safety audits to see what is there already, what initiatives are there. It can be used to identify leadership and those people that can help you. We must then make sure that the strategies and plans do not just remain plans on paper, but they are actually translated into actionable objectives. And then I think the final thing is to make sure that this can work, is that we must identify those people that can be held accountable for moving the plans through time and to make sure that objectives are reached within its prescripts and on time, and of course within budget. Thank you for this opportunity to participate in this panel. I always find it interesting that although we come from a wide variety of backgrounds, in the end, the themes always come together. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for pointing out that everything came together here. There will be a recording of this event that will be distributed to you all. We will contact you again at some point. We need to write something about this, get something on paper, get something out there apart from the YouTube video. But it will never be without your permission. Don't worry. You will be our critical readers on everything we're trying to write, and if you volunteer, you can even help writing. So that will be done in future, not the so near future. But we, as Kovas said in his and Willie thanking us in the chats, we need to educate the man in the street with what we on these solutions. In the end, this job must be done by people and educated people, informed people. So people, it was for me a huge privilege to have you here. It was a learning experience that will stay with me for a long time, and it got us all thinking. And thank you all very much for making time, and I just want to wish you good luck and know that you will always have my support in what you are busy with. Congratulations with what you've already done. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.